It's Ash from Super Videos, back for another video for Season 10 of The Walking Dead. This is going to be my breakdown for the latest teaser that they released for Season 10, which is called Our Survival. Now, this specific teaser is not like anything you've seen before, so it's kind of like a unique new thing they have done for Season 10, which I absolutely love. It has like an artistic tone to it, which I absolutely love. There are shots in this teaser that look like paintings, and they just want you to kind of look at this as a storyboard, and it's very cool and I absolutely love it. There are scenes from previous seasons, some iconic shots from some of the previous seasons, season 9 specifically, but also other seasons, and also bits and pieces of new shots from the new season. In the background of this specific teaser, there's a voiceover of a speech from King Ezekiel. I thought that was very, very interesting. Of all people who could give this kind of speech, it's none other than King Ezekiel, and I definitely think that is a hint that this season will be a big season for King Ezekiel somehow. Not saying he's necessarily gonna die, but I am saying that we might be seeing some big things from King Ezekiel in terms of character development and potentially his death this season. The other thing that I do want to mention that I might bring up multiple times in this video is that parts of King Ezekiel's speech is definitely new. Like, it's brand new, we haven't heard it before, but parts of it are coming directly from the speech that Rick Grimes gave at the end of Season 8. If you remember, at the end of Season 8, we had the end of All Out War. Rick gave this big speech. Now, parts of King Ezekiel's speech in this teaser are coming from that, or if they're not directly coming from it, they are inspired very much by that speech, which I also thought was very, very interesting. So with that, let's jump right into this video. Now, first I'm going to go over the speech itself and then go through the specific scenes. So King Ezekiel says, "Our survival brought us together. We are a community of equals. Together we are stronger. Our common morality with all who would join us in peace and fairness." And then at this point, this is where there's a lot of common vocabulary that King Ezekiel uses that was used by Rick Grimes in his speech at the end of Season 8. So he says, "For those who would find common ground, this world is yours by right. Bound by common trust, life, and our humanity, the world new again." Now, what I just noticed is that maybe it's not even coming from the speech Rick gave at the end of the season. It might be part of his speech at the beginning of Season 8, during the start of All Out War. So, if you remember, both of those speeches were very similar. So, it seems like King Ezekiel is using parts of Rick's speech from the beginning of All Out War and parts of his speech from the ending of All Out War, which is interesting. Then he says, "Our welfare and safety are our highest priorities. If war comes, our sacred trust is in the lives and welfare of us all. Together, we survive." So our survival is how it begins, and we survive is how it ends. So I thought that was a cool way to bring everything full circle as far as this speech is concerned. But that's basically the speech. I mean, it's very motivational, not even looking at it from a TV show perspective, but also looking at the TV show and where the story is at. It's very, very inspirational and motivational for the survivors. So with that, let's jump right into the specific scenes. So first, we have this shot of a crow, and then it kind of zooms out. Now, what is very apparent throughout this teaser is that in the background, we do see snippets or even sections of the charter that Rick Grimes and Michonne actually pioneered. If you remember, they wrote it, all of the leaders from the different communities signed it, and we see scripts from that throughout this teaser in the background. And also in the background, there is a bright red sun that's consistent for all of the shots, which is very, very interesting. It's almost in every single shot that we have. So that's also very, very interesting. An interesting way to kind of link all of these shots together. Now, there's obviously different imagery that's there. I don't want to dive too deep into that because that could take forever. But what's very, very interesting is that the bright sun is consistent everywhere, which I absolutely love. So we have this crow, it zooms out and flies away. And then we have this shot of Daryl, and in the background we have the pikes referring back to, or connecting back to the heads and pikes scene from the last season, which was one of the biggest scenes in the entire Walking Dead history. And obviously in the background, we have what I said before, which is portions of the script or portions of the charter that all of the different communities signed, which was obviously, like I said, written by Michonne and Rick. Then it kind of zooms out, and that's where the speech that I just kind of went through starts. And then as it zooms out, Daryl's image becomes more of a silhouette with him holding a knife. I absolutely loved that. Then we have this shot of Daryl, and in the background we have Hilltop, Alexandria. So if you remember, in the charter at the bottom, there were these different sections, areas where the leaders would sign for that community. So that's exactly what that is. Then we have this shot, which comes directly from last season. If you remember, this is Luke and Alden. And this is when they first encountered the Whispers. So that's very interesting. Again, the red, yellow, orange, however you want to look at it. That bright sun is in the background, so it's consistent everywhere. And then we have this shot of Michonne looking through binoculars. And there's a windmill behind her, so this is obviously at Alexandria. We have this epic shot of Carol in the background. We have the forest and what seems to be fire in the forest, which is consistent in the trailers and teasers that we've seen. So that's very interesting. And we have this shot of King Ezekiel. And in the background, we have a shot of the main house at the kingdom. Now that's very interesting because the kingdom fell apart, but we still do have the kingdom there with King Ezekiel. So that's very cool. And obviously the sun is still there. Now, like I mentioned earlier, it's very interesting that they have, of all people, King Ezekiel giving this speech. I thought that was very interesting. Then we have this shot of Judith in her Rick Grimes pose. Absolutely love that. This shot of Magna and Yumiko. Again, the red bright sun in the background. And then we have this shot of the water tower. Now, this water tower is very interesting because it has two meanings, or it has two references. One is from last season. If you remember, Eugene was climbing the tower and he fell down. And that's when Rosita and Eugene kind of ran for their lives because there was a herd around. And that's when they first encountered the Whispers. When they first heard the Whispers. Now, the other aspect of it is that the water tower is a reference to what happens in the comics to Father Gabriel. Father Gabriel has a pretty brutal and gruesome death in the comics. Even if they don't do the exact same thing with Father Gabriel, they might give that death to someone else but have it play out the same. Then we have this shot of Negan in his sanctuary. We know that because of the window in the background. And this shot comes directly from season 8, so that's very, very interesting. Then we have this shot of Carol, Daryl, Michonne, and two other people who I can't recognize the way it is, looking at the poles. Of course, this is the border that Alpha and the Whisperers set up, and this is coming from season 10 itself. This was in the trailer, this specific scene. Then we have this shot of Alpha, which is pretty cool shot of her. Then we have this shot of Beta. He looks pretty intimidating here. He looks super badass. And then this shot, which is a more zoomed out version of the same shot. We have this shot, which happens super quick. If you blink, you miss it. It's basically Alpha and Whispers behind her. That's pretty cool. And there's that bright red sun in the background still. Then we have this shot of Michonne and Daryl. They're standing right by the Whispers border, which is pretty cool. This shot of Eugene, and in the background we have Alexandria, so the tower at Alexandria, so that's a pretty cool shot. Then we have this shot of Rosita, which is pretty cool. Now this shot of Rosita is a pretty old shot. I think this is from season 6, if I'm not wrong, so that's very interesting that they chose that shot for her. Then we have this shot, which I absolutely love. We have the sun in the back, we have Michonne and Judith sitting on rocks, and they're just talking. Now this scene comes right from season 9. If you remember when we had that flashback from what happened during the time jump, when Michonne went through what she went through, thinking Judith was dead and having to do what she did with the kids, this scene comes from that. If you remember the aftermath, Judith and Michonne talk about what has happened and about everything else. This is where that scene comes from. And I absolutely love that this connects to this portion in the speech that says our humanity. So I thought that was absolutely awesome how that kind of connected and how that lines up. Then we have this shot of Father Gabriel cleaning up what seems to be some sort of a barn. So that's pretty cool. And again, the red bright sun in the background. It could also be his church, not sure, but very interesting. Again, we could see a lot more of the script from the charter that I talked about. And this reveals that this is obviously Father Gabriel. Then we have this shot of Connie, and then this shot of Alden. And this scene is, I think, again, connected back to Luke and Alden's first encounter with the Whisperers. Then we have this shot of Siddiq. Now, what's very interesting is that this lines up with the part in the speech that says, if war comes. Now, we did talk about this before, but there is a theory that Siddiq is the person that starts the war with the Whisperers by spray painting the messages and trying to push for the war. So, if there's any truth to that, this is definitely a solid, concrete proof. Or not even proof, but think that backs that theory up. Then we have this shot of Lydia and some Whisperers in the background and Alpha on the left in the background. That's pretty cool, very powerful if you think about the imagery and the message that they're trying to deliver with this, which is, Lydia, even though she's with the survivors, she's still Alpha's daughter. So, no matter how separate she is from her, there's that connection still, so we can't forget that. So at the core, even though she's not officially a Whisperer, she was a Whisperer and she has a close connection to the Whisperers. Then we have this shot of Aaron looking pretty mad. This shot comes straight from the trailer, if you remember. So that's pretty cool. But in the background, we have the walls of Hilltop. And again, the writing that comes from the charter. This shot of some of the survivors on horseback. This also comes directly from the trailer. There's a scene in the trailer that is this exact thing from season 10, obviously. That's pretty cool. And again, in the background, we do have the writing from the charter. We have this shot, which again comes from the trailer of the survivors. Now, they are at the ocean side during this scene. Then we have this pretty epic shot of Michonne killing a bunch of walkers with her katana. And then this shot of, I think, Alpha, but I could be wrong. Then we have this shot of Judith holding up the mask that she found. This is, again, straight from the trailer. Then we have this shot, which is of some walkers coming in. And this is at the hilltop. So walkers break into the hilltop. So that's very interesting. Now, this could either be scenes from the previous seasons, which is entirely possible, or it's from the new season. So that's very interesting. So either Hilltop gets attacked or it doesn't. We don't know for sure. Then we have this shot of Daryl shooting his crossbow. It's a pretty cool shot of him. And then this shot of the crow again. And then this shot of Carol looking super badass. And then we have this shot. And then this shot of Michonne, Daryl, and the heads on pikes in the background, which I think is super, super cool. These are all very, very artistic and very interesting and super epic shots that we have throughout this teaser. But then we have this shot of Alpha again. And then it ends with this shot of The Walking Dead title card. New seasons starting October 6th. And we have the Whisperers at the bottom. That's pretty much it. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Let me know what you guys think about this teaser. I absolutely loved it. That's it for this video. See you next time for another super video. If you like what you see, press like, subscribe for more content, and press the bell button to receive notifications for daily uploads.